And we're good at that. We're good at talking. But if that's all we ever do, it's sounding brass and tinkling cymbals, a bunch of noise.
That's right.
And the church has been doing it for years.
Yeah.
If we're not going to do something, let's just shut up about it.
Yeah, that's right.
If we're going to stand and talk about what should be done, then let's do it. And as I said, for years, the church has been talking about it, but the church ain't been doing nothing. It goes back to that old saying, it's time to put up or shut up. Let's just be honest with ourselves, because God already knows whether we're just talk or whether we mean business.
Amen.
We've talked about, there's a fight that's coming, and there's a fight that we're going to have to face, but we're not prepared. We're not ready. Too much of the church is sleeping, or chasing feel-good, or deceived by prosperity, or, as Jake has already said here this morning, and gets set alive, they're convinced they can just ride the pew. We're not prepared for a fight. And I'm going to tell you, if a fight would come right now, 99% of the church would be casualties.
Yes.
We need to prepare. You can be a born-again child of God. You can have the Spirit of God. You can be a powerful, born-again child of God, filled with the Spirit of God. But if you ain't careful, you can be taken out.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
We got three enemies that we got to be wary of. The world, the flesh, and the devil. Here's our biggest problem. We're so worried about what the devil is going to do, we don't pay attention to what our flesh is doing.
That's right.
Or what the world is doing.
That's right.
We're looking behind every bush for the booger man when we're defeating ourselves. And I know I say this stuff a lot, but it's the truth. In a lot of our lives, Satan doesn't have to do a single solitary thing. We do it. I don't believe there's very many Christians who ever come face to face with Satan, because he don't got to waste his time. We're doing his work for him. All he does is step in at the end and slap the shackles on. We do everything leading up to that. And if we're going to face this fight, then we have to be wary of the things that are bringing us down. There's a lot of talk about the really wicked, evil things and all this stuff, and most Christians avoid those. But you all know this, it's the little foxes. Mm-hmm. It's the getting comfortable. It's the getting relaxed. It's accepting little things that leads to our downfall, that leads to our destruction. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit this morning in the book of Judges. And we're going to be mainly in chapter 16, but I want to lead up to that. In chapter 13, we have here in the book of Judges, it's talking about the birth of Samson. And the angel had come to Manoah and his wife and said, you're going to be having a son. And this son shall be a Nazarite unto God. And it goes on in that chapter 13, it said that he was born, they called his name Samson, and the child grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to move him. Here was a mighty man of God, a strong man of God, filled with the Spirit from his mother's womb. This was, if anybody was a man of God, he certainly was a man of God, chosen by God, filled with the Spirit, set apart. But he was human. Just like we are. You can be a mighty man or woman of God. You can be filled with the Spirit. But you're human. And you've got to be on guard about what that flesh is going to do. You've got to be on guard about what's going to happen to you. If we go into chapter 14. Chapter 13 ends with the birth of Samson. Then it goes into chapter 14. It says, this is after Samson grew up apparently. Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistine. Jump down to verse 3. At the end of that verse it says, he said to his parents, get her for me, for she pleases me well. If you go and read that, they're saying, this Philistine, this uncircumcised people, worldly people, ungodly people, if you will, why do you want her? Could you get somebody from your own people? But listen what he said, she pleases me well. Get her for me. What was he following? He was following the flesh.
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest things we got to be careful of that the Bible talks about over? The lust of the flesh. We have to be careful about that. He wanted her, and because his flesh desire, she pleases me well. His flesh wanted her. And I'm not going to read all this, so you read it when you get the chance. He decided he was going to marry this girl, and so they come together and they're having the big 7-day feast for the marriage, and Samson presents a riddle to these people. If you all remember, or he killed the lion, he went back, he got the honey out of the lion, and he made a riddle out of it with these people. And if they could have solved his riddle, they had to pay off to him, or he had to pay them. If they couldn't solve it, they got to pay him. And so he had this riddle. And listen, these people that he had this riddle with came and said to his wife, came to pass on the 7th day that they said to his wife, entice thy husband. His desire to have this woman, his desire to follow the flesh and get something out of the world. And what happens after that? It begins to entice him to do something he ought not do, to say something he ought not say. She enticed him to get the answer to the riddle out of him. Now, I'm not going to hang on this a long time. I just kind of laying a little foundation for it. They come down and they said to her, entice him, that he'll tell us the riddle. You go on in that chapter, and verse 17 says, and she wept before him for 7 days. And then it goes on and says, he told her because she lay sore upon him. She just kept egging him on and egging him on and picking at him and picking at him and picking at him. He went into the world, pulled something out of the world because that's what his flesh desired. Once he got that thing out of the world that his flesh desired, it enticed him to do something he shouldn't do, say something he shouldn't say, act in a way, because it just kept wearing on him. At first he didn't do it. But it just kept on and it kept on and it kept on and it kept on. And it caused him to do something that he ought not to do. And in the end, this caused a lot of trouble. We're not going to go into all this, but it ended up with death and destruction and all kinds of things because he allowed himself to be enticed. And what was it that enticed him? The thing of the world. That's what enticed him. The lust of his own flesh caused him to desire something of the world. And then once he had that thing from the world, it caused him to do things he ought not to do. Say things he ought not to say. And I just want you to remember that as we go on. We're going to go into chapter 16. It says, beginning 16, then went Samson to Gaza and saw there a harlot and went into her. Samson's got a bit of a problem. We see he married this woman of the Philistines, and now he goes down here and he goes into a harlot. Now, we as Christians have weakness. This was obviously a weakness for Samson. And we as Christians have weaknesses, and we know what our weaknesses are. Samson had to know what his weakness was. But he didn't avoid where he would be tempted. And a lot of us are the same way. We know what our weaknesses are, but we put ourselves in places and in positions where those weaknesses can tempt us, where those weaknesses can draw us aside. And Samson just continually did this. You know why, I think? Because Samson was like a lot of us. I can handle it.
Yeah.
I'm stronger than that. I can handle it. This ain't going to get me. I can do it. Go on in this chapter in verse 4. It came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Again, he loved this woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Another one, another time that he allowed his flesh to draw him to places that he shouldn't go and do things that he shouldn't do. The lust of the flesh will cause you to do a lot of things that you shouldn't do. Now, listen and understand me well. Every time we say lust, we're not talking about sex.
That's right.
It's what your flesh wants.
Right.
It's an inordinate desire. That's what it is. An overwhelming desire to have something. That's what lust is when you lust after something. You crave it. You think about it. You got to have it. That's what lust is, and it can be anything.
Yeah.
But here we see that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Now, I started out saying we have three enemies we really got to worry about. The world, the flesh, and the devil. And I want us to look at this, that Delilah is of the world. Okay? His flesh is his lust, it's his problem. It is his flesh that causes him to go after these worldly women. It is his flesh that causes him to put himself in positions that he ought not. He starts to begin to partake of things of the world. And probably, I don't know this, the Bible don't say it, and I already said it, but probably he's just like us. I can handle it. Look at me, I'm Samson. I'm about the strongest guy that ever lived, and I can do all these amazing and wonderful and mighty things. This tiny little thing cannot bring me down. But it's the little foxes.
That's right.
And we need to be careful of where we allow our flesh to take us. I'm going to use Peg, and I don't think she'll mind, because she stood up and talked about, she gets caught up in solitaire. Why? She likes to do that. Is it her godly spirit that likes to do that? Or is it her flesh?
The flesh.
Not that it's a bad thing or a sin or a wrong thing. But God has revealed to her that too much of it is wrong for her. And as I said, I wanted to say that because I want to make this point. It can be anything.
Right.
It can be the World Series. It can be a football team. It can be fishing. It can be hunting. It can be your family. If you put your family before God, and God tells the disciples about that. Anybody who loves father or mother, brother, sister, anybody else more than me is not worthy of me. It can be anything. And listen, Christian, each and every one of us sitting here, I can almost guarantee it, put things before God.
Amen.
Because our flesh likes them, because our flesh wants them, because our flesh desires them, and they will eventually get you into trouble with God.
That's right.
We can easily be drawn away. Listen,
Bless you, Lord.
I want to put this right. You can go, we talked about riding the pew and getting comfortable and all that kind of stuff. And you can go and allow yourself to believe that because that's easy for the flesh. Because you like that. Because that makes your life just so much more the better. And you're happy and you're content. You don't got to do anything. You don't got to put forth any effort. You show up at church on Sunday morning, sit there for an hour or two and go home, and everything is fine. And we do that because the flesh likes that.
That's right.
And listen, that can get you in trouble. Eventually, you know what's going to happen to you? You're going to fall asleep. The Bible talks about that. Knowing the time, now it's high time to awake out of sleep. Who was he talking to when he wrote that? He was talking to the church. Listen. As I said, we're not ready for a fight. We're too busy chasing after other things other than what we're supposed to be chasing after. We want that feel good. We want that comfort. And I'm going to tell you something. I know I say it a lot, but we need to get it through our thick heads that this is not a life of comfort. This is not a life of ease. This is not a life of happy, joy all the time. That's not the Christian life. I defy you to show me in the Bible where the disciples were always shouting and running the aisles. I defy you to show me in the Bible where they got wealthy beyond their wildest imaginations and had herds of camels and houses on the hill. You can't show it to me in there, but that's what the church has become. That's what the church is passing off as the gospel. I'm going to tell you what the gospel is according to that book. It's hard.
Amen.
Amen.
They hated him and they're going to hate you. They despised him and they're going to, if that ain't happening, we're doing something wrong.
That's right.
We can't go along to get along and profess ourselves to be Christians. And the more God reveals these things, and the more I read it, and the more I think about it, and the more God opens my eyes, the more I believe that narrow way is narrower than we ever thought.
Amen. Yes.
And the few that be are fewer than we ever thought. And we better understand we're allowing our flesh to be in the driver's seat.
That's right.
It don't got to be a woman. It don't got to be a harlot. It don't got to be drugs. It don't got to be alcohol. It can be anything that takes you away from God, that takes you away from your duties and your responsibilities to God, that steals your time.
That's right.
Amen.
It could be anything. We need to understand that. And it's like I said, we're so worried about the devil that we don't even see what we're doing to ourselves.
That's right. Bless him, Lord.
Listen, everything here that happened to Samson, he did to himself. He put himself in that position. He went and pulled things from the world because his flesh wanted that. And that's what we do.
That's right.
And again, I got to repeat it because I want this clear. When I say that it's of the world, it's not necessarily a harlot or something like that. If you choose anything over the things of God, you're in the same boat that Samson was in.
That's right.
And Samson did it. And we do it. Why? As Peg said, do we not have that power that when we pray, something happens, things happen, because we are weak.
That's right.
We are lukewarm. We are asleep.
Yes, amen.
We're in a spiritual invalid ward. We don't have any power because the flesh has overcome the spirit, and we like it that way.
That's right.
And let's don't lie to ourselves. We do like it that way.
Come on.
Because it's easy and it's comfortable. And I get to feel good. We're not ready for the fight that's coming.
That's right.
We are not prepared for what is coming. This it says, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said unto her, entice him. I read you that same phrase back with the other one. Entice him. And that's exactly what is going to happen when you start dabbling with the things of the world, when you start dabbling with the things that your flesh wants, when you start messing around. Why she played so long? She was enticed. We need to understand what words mean. Well, like when we say lust and we say entice, we're thinking that stuff all the time. It's going out and getting harlots and doing this and doing. It's not.
That's right.
Anything the flesh wants can entice you. Why do people go put their boat in the water instead of going to church? Because it's enticing. The things will entice you away from God.
That's right.
Your flesh will fall prey to that. And listen, he went down. His flesh said, I want this woman from the world. His flesh said, I want this worldly thing because I can handle it. But what happened after he got this worldly thing? The lords of the Philistines came along. Let's look at them as Satan. And took what the world had and began to entice. We do the work all leading up to it.